Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the relatively uncommon normal fairy-type Pokemon Azurill, the Polka Dot Pokémon, its relatively common water fairy-type evolution Marill, the Aqua Mouse Pokémon, and its relatively uncommon final evolution Azumarill, the Aqua Rabbit Pokémon. While they might not look to be the most imposing of fighters, the members of the Azurill family are adorable and fun-loving creatures that can definitely put to use some surprising power to take down those that would dare to underestimate them. Azurill possess round blue bodies with rounded ears with pink insides, small legs they occasionally use for limited locomotion, white spots on their cheeks, a small mouth, and large black eyes. Their tail is enormous in size, about the same size as their body, with a rounded blue ball-shaped form connected to them by a thin elastic black piece of connective tissue. Their evolved form, Marill, have a similarly shaped body with the same general fur color, though their tails are much smaller in size now compared to the rest of their body. They have dark blue eyes and a white belly, and they have developed a set of arms that they can use to grasp objects freely. Their final evolution, Azumarill, have a more ovoid body form with the same general limb structure and brown eyes, their tail not having changed color all that much. They now have a white bubble pattern to their fur with a white lower body, and their ears have grown immensely in size, resembling that of a rabbit in this state. The members of the Azurill family are interesting creatures that are linked together by their choice of aquatic habitats and their shared affinity for both water and the power of fairy force energy, but it is interesting to note that they are not all able to make much use of the offenses that they are naturally born with. Normally, these creatures are able to reproduce normally and have no problem adding more to their kind, but when Marill are bred while a parent of the same family is holding a sea incense, it causes a mutation in the developing offspring that stunts their growth, resulting in the creation of Azurill. These creatures are so weakly developed in their natural powers that they lack the same elemental affinity that their evolved forms have, being normal fairy types instead of water fairy types. This doesn't really make their lives significantly harder, but it does limit their offensive capabilities and requires high friendship to make them evolve. Even so, they are still linked with the rest of their family, in that these creatures are herbivores and feed on the plants on river bottoms as their primary means of sustenance, and are able to stay suspended in the water thanks to their tail. The tails of these creatures contain a unique oil that is much less dense than water, and thus allows them to float in the water quite easily, enough so that they rarely have to worry about going too far or drowning, something that is further helped out by the fact that the connective tissue in their tail is extremely elastic and can be stretched to an enormous degree. This same oil is also able to help them reduce the effects of attacks that involve extreme temperatures, and thus grants them access to the thick fat ability as a base ability, and those that can use their herbivorous nature to absorb plant-based energies can also have sap sipper as a hidden ability. But it is their other primary ability that really makes them a threat: huge power. This incredibly rare ability essentially works just like the pure power ability, and effectively results in the internal energies of these creatures being channeled into their muscles more strongly than normal, effectively doubling their attack stat while the ability is active. Although their offenses on that note are usually quite weak, this ability helps to make them a severe physical threat, and definitely a force to be reckoned with if they can't be taken out quickly. As far as their stats go, in the case of Azumarill, these creatures do not have much to speak of in terms of advantages, as their forms are somewhat soft and not well protected, their movement speeds are pretty low, and they do not have much in the way of offensive strength to speak of. The one thing they do have going for them is their plush fur and limited blubber, which grant them decent stamina and above average base HP stat for fully evolved water and fairy type Pokemon, so at the very least, they can take some hits and try to make the most of what offenses they do have access to. In their mutated, incomplete state, Azurill are unable to make much use of the few water-type attacks they do gain access to naturally, and are in turn poorly suited for aquatic life, usually only being able to go so far as to splash around in shallows, but this seems to be of little consequence to them. Because their limbs are not fully developed, they have a hard time moving about on land using traditional movement, so instead they utilize their massive tails as a tool of transport. Their tail, which is in fact about as large as their entire body at the end, is packed with nutrients that these creatures need to grow and develop, limiting them to only evolving when they are happy and have drained their tail of excess nutrients, and are also filled with a great deal of spongy, elastic tissue that gives their tail the same consistency and feeling as a soft rubber ball. These creatures use this as a form of locomotion, bouncing around on their tail in order to get around, and often look quite adorable doing so. They can also swing their massive tail around like a lasso before throwing it in a direction as hard as they can in order to hurl themselves over long distances, the mass in their tail providing more than enough momentum to carry the rest of their form. The record for this is about 33 feet, and it serves as a simple way for them to get around without having to rely on their weak legs. These creatures are usually calm-natured and quite playful and enjoy splashing around at the edge of the water on sunny days, but if they are angered, they can further use their tail as a weapon, as while they have unique access to the splash and charm techniques, they are also able to get fairly early access to the slam and bounce attacks with their tail, which their evolved forms do not get, so they can offer a bit of unique versatility if worked with. It is lastly noted that, for reasons that are still unclear, the sex ratio for these creatures is off, as females outnumber males 4 to 1, while the evolved forms have an equal gender ratio, resulting in some females becoming male when they evolve. Additional research is needed to understand why this mutation in particular comes as a result of their parents' close contact with sea incense when breeding. Marill live fairly simple lives in the wild, feeding on plants that grow on the rocks at the bottoms of stream beds and other bodies of water, rarely ever taking an aggressive stance towards anything. This is only possible because of their water-repellent fur, which helps to keep them dry at all times and eliminates drag in the water so they can swim freely, and their tail which, as already mentioned, contains a special oil that allows it to float almost indefinitely above the surface of the water, not to mention that it glows when these creatures channel their elemental powers and go to deliver a special attack. However, while these makeshift buoys can help them stay out of danger of drowning, with their presence alone indicating that a Marill is below the surface hunting for food, always giving them a way to get back to the surface to breathe, it does not completely protect them from being swept away by fast-moving currents. To rectify this, when these creatures are planning on journeying into fast-moving water, they will wrap their elastic tails around a tree before going into the water, so while it gives them a great deal of pull and leeway, it also keeps them from being completely taken away from their place of safety. With all of this said, these creatures are not incredibly strong and do have many predators to worry about, but as the only water-type rodent Pokemon known, along with their evolved form Azumarill, these creatures are still fun to play with and quite easy to train and get to evolve, making them good Pokemon to start off with if one is just starting out as a water-type specialist or a trainer in general. In order to adapt to strong predators in the lands that they roam, when Marill evolve into Azumarill, they become more rabbit-like in form and their ears grow immensely in size. As a result of their large size, these ears allow these creatures to hear almost anything from a great distance away in the water and even within loud, fast-moving currents, allowing them to detect potential threats long before they are in range of sight. They have to keep their ears rolled up when underwater to keep them from getting wet and dampening their hearing ability, but this is only a minor issue, as these creatures are protected against attack by the bubble pattern on their bodies, which breaks up their color form and allows them to camouflage themselves in the water they swim and often live within. In addition, these creatures can spend excessive amounts of time underwater as a result of their huge lungs, which take up a huge portion of their vital space, and can even store the air and release it through their mouths in the form of a large air balloon underwater, which they can use to provide air to those who might be trapped beneath the surface and keep them from drowning readily. This alone has made them popular Pokemon for lifeguards to have at beaches and pools, and it helps to cement these creatures as fairly useful from a utilitarian standpoint, even if their natural combat abilities might not be that great outside of their potential to have the huge power ability. Cute in appearance and potentially packing great power in them, the members of the Azurill family are fun rodents to play around with that can definitely brighten the day of just about anyone they come across. You might have some hoops to jump through to get them fully evolved from a pre-evolved state, but they can still make good companions for those that are looking for just a little fun in the sun. Just do yourself a favor and try not to follow their lead in the water blindly. They might be built to be able to live in the water for long periods of time, but humans are clearly not, and if you try to imitate them, you may end up requiring their assistance if you run out of air or otherwise end up in a current that human bodies were never meant to be able to overcome. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description. With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.